everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your morning to come to this session. My name's Alistair Harris. I'm a biologist with the Madagascar-based conservation NGO Blue Ventures, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this session, which is called Locally Managed Marine Areas Towards a Global Learning Network. This session was born out of the growing interest in and the expansion of locally managed marine area efforts, community-based marine protected areas, small-scale locally managed fisheries projects that we've been seeing around the world, growing and growing more and more frequently over the last 5 years, and indeed the last 10 years. And it was also inspired by the opportunity for some of these new regions where we're seeing LMMAs developing, particularly the Western Indian Ocean and the Caribbean and South America, to be inspired and learn from the very rich experience and knowledge that has already been brought together within a network in what we now affectionately know as LMMA, the Locally Managed Marine Areas Network for the Southwestern Pacific. So this is really an opportunity to catalyse information sharing between LMMA and those other regions that are represented here today from the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. And this workshop has been made possible firstly by IUCN, so we really want to thank IUCN for giving us this incredible space in the middle of the conference centre, in the middle of the conference, and also through generous support from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, who are very kindly enabling us to bring together some locally managed marine area managers from around the world, and I'll introduce them very shortly. I don't know how many of you here were present in yesterday's World Bank Oceans Plus meeting. I was particularly inspired by some of the data that was shared in that meeting. Mark Spalding, who's just arrived, presented data on the latest spatial data on the area coverage of protected and managed areas within the WCMC's protected area database. And we learned that, I think in the latest unpublished data, almost 2.3% of the oceans are protected, which is an almost exponential increase over time, and that looks set to continue. That's over 10,000 areas under management globally. And Mark mentioned that one of the key drivers of this expansion, as well as those very large global offshore MPAs that we hear so much about in the media, as well as them, one of the key drivers is these small-scale local initiatives that we know as LMMAs or LAMA. And so this workshop is one of a series of events this week to focus attention on these LMMAs involving many partners. This session is a collaboration between LMMA, Cordio, that's Coastal Oceans Research and Development in the Indian Ocean, that's a Mombasa-based NGO, the Society for the Conservation of Fish Spawning Aggregations, UNEP WCMC, Solidar, and so there's a lot of NGOs that are coming together this week to help move forward this dialogue. So within this expansion of LMMAs, I personally see this as particularly important and relevant for the HE targets, which mention not just a goal of 10% protection, but also it specifically mentions the protection of areas that are important for ecosystem service provision and equitable management. That's not those large offshore areas. That really does affect directly what we're talking about today, LMMAs, because not only do these areas conserve coastal and marine biodiversity, as we all know, but perhaps more than any other approach to marine conservation, these are essential for safeguarding coastal food security, for coastal poverty alleviation in some of the most economically marginalised regions of the tropics and the subtropics, for food security, and even for gender empowerment in fisheries management. So we want to talk about all of those areas today. So we really do see LMMAs as a way of integrating conservation into a seascape approach and viewing MPAs not really as islands of protection amidst an ocean of degradation, but really as the building blocks of tropical and subtropical coastal sustainable development. We're very, very fortunate today to have with us representatives of LMMAs from around the world, from the Atlantic and the Indo-Pacific. Indeed, today is the biggest global gathering in terms of the geographical spread of LMMA representatives that really has ever taken place. And all week we've got, I think, 15 to 20 managers with us from as far afield as Grenada, Comores, and Costa Rica, and Vanuatu. Indeed, I think some of the countries represented in this room now include the Republic of Comores, Costa Rica, Vanuatu, Grenada, Solomon Islands, Vietnam, Lakshadweep Archipelago in India, Kenya, Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Madagascar, and more. So there's an incredible wealth of knowledge in this room, and I really would encourage you all to give these local leaders the opportunity to engage in this discussion. And thanks again to the funders that made their participation possible. In a nutshell, this session is about giving these local leaders the opportunity to help us identify how we can do more to help them in their work. Learning from existing best practice, particularly in the Pacific, but there are also isolated success stories from all around the world that we have to share. Looking at how we can really move forward in catalysing other networks of local management where there aren't currently networks, particularly, for instance, the Western Indian Ocean, and how I work for an NGO, we in the conservation community can do more to catalyse and maintain this momentum. We very much want to have a participatory discussion, so we quickly move into small groups. We want this to be very informal to encourage as many of you to share information as possible. And the conversation will really be guided by the debate that we have. We've got 2 hours, so we need to be very efficient with our time. To help set the scene before I introduce the chair of this session, I'd like to invite Laura, who's here from Costa Rica, and representing the Community Association Tacoles, to talk a little bit about her work in an area where community-based marine management really isn't written about or talked about very often. And when you listen to Laura and watch a short film that she's going to present, I'd like you to bear in mind that there are at least 20 other stories like hers in this room. We haven't obviously got time to have 20 presentations, but we would like you to listen to Laura. We don't have translation facilities, so I believe that Laura will be speaking through a translator. Is that possible?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Does she use this microphone?
Yes, or the front, whichever.
Buenos días. Soy Laura de Costa Rica y vamos a presentarle un video.
She's Laura from Costa Rica, and she wants to present her video.
You need to be in the microphone, so the translator needs to be in the microphone.
Esta es una área de pesca responsable de Centroamérica.
This is a responsible fishing area in Costa Rica.
Le vamos a presentar el proceso que llevamos allá.
We're going to present to you the process that is taking place there.
That's it.
So if we could put the film on now about Tacoles, please.
que sin el conocimiento de los pescadores no hubiera sido posible hacer un área marina de pesca. Entonces era importante contar con toda la ayuda de todos los pescadores artesanales para poder luego fomentar el área marina.
Nació de los mismos pescadores, y no es que nadie diga y diga no, ustedes deben de tener estas normas, no, esto salió de ellos mismos.
Y creo que nosotros nos hicimos preocupados por la forma desmedida de cómo se está pescando desordenadamente, y creo que esto nos ha motivado y ha motivado a otras organizaciones para que realmente repliquen lo que hemos hecho nosotros a nivel de organización.
Se pelearon 5 millas, pero se negaron. Le planeamos, bueno, menos. Y no pudimos, nos iban a dar una milla.
No es fácil, hay que trabajar con el pescador mucho. Ellos están anuentes a cooperar. Si se les dice que es para un bien para ellos mismos, que es para recuperar el recurso.
Sabemos que los cambios son muy difíciles, que no todas las personas aceptamos estos cambios. Algunas personas que no están de acuerdo con el plan de ordenamiento del área marina de pesca responsable de Talples hicieron cosas indebidas. En este caso, mi embarcación y la de un compañero, Miguel Ladis, fueron objeto de vándalos. Diría yo que personas que no tienen conciencia de que el esfuerzo que se está haciendo hoy es un esfuerzo que tenemos que hacerlo para tener recursos para el futuro.
Fuimos los mismos pescadores que tuvimos la iniciativa de hacer la prueba del museo. Hoy estamos en una investigación para mostrar a Infopesca los resultados que está dando. El museo consiste en tanquear 4 puntos con diferentes tipos de mallas para ver qué cantidad de pescado está saliendo en esa área que se está protegiendo.
Desde que se implementó el área marina han habido especies de que no llegaban y han estado llegando en cantidad.
Los barcos son los que destruyen todo. En cambio, si ellos salen más, nosotros tenemos más posibilidades de agarrar más porque ellos destruyen menos.
Sí se nota mucha mejoría por el motivo de los barcos, que ellos están matando la crianza. Entonces ya lo tenemos fuera de la milla, entonces no están matando esa parte. Entonces el pescado está criando ahí.
La producción de pescado, se captura más, se cría más, es buena la protección que tenemos ahorita.
Aproximadamente hace 30 años no teníamos un efecto de una persona sacar unos róbalos en la playa y arrimar a la sardina que se llama anchoa.
Antes no se veía turbinas, se había visto más grandecitas, más cantidad.
Hay mucho camarón, hay tanta reflexión que se ve hasta a la orilla de la playa. Justo de eso de la bahía está cerca de la costa.
Thank you very much, Laura and Tanya. That's fantastic. Could we get the presentation back, please? Now, about 4 years ago, I was working in Madagascar with a colleague who's here today called Gildas Andriamala, and for the previous 6 or 7 years, we've been involved in developing small-scale fisheries closures to try to catalyze community interest in locally managed marine areas. We didn't have a name for those locally managed marine areas then, and what we were doing was very novel at the time. Since that time, there have been over 140 of these fisheries closures created in Madagascar. But at the time, we really were moving forward with a model that was quite experimental. And we had the opportunity to travel to Fiji in the Pacific, where we realized that what we were doing wasn't novel at all. In Fiji, we encountered an incredible network called LMMA, that was already bringing together community representatives from over 500 similar initiatives across these 7 countries, managed and coordinated from the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. But it was an inspiring moment from us, and really that showed us in the Western Indian Ocean, when we returned home, what opportunities could be learned from the Pacific and could be potentially replicated as we look towards networking these networks at an international level. And so I'd like to introduce now to say a few words about the evolution of LAMA and the global evolution of LMMAs to date. The president of the LMMA Council, Alifreti Tekawe, who represents Fiji as one of the 7 countries represented on the Council of LMMA. So Alifreti, would you like to come and say a few words?
May I also echo the words of welcome. In my language, it's Bola Binaka. It also means good health, and I hope you're all in good health this morning. I think it's important to recognize the leaders that are here. The names are up there and the countries that they represent, and if we can recognize them by giving them, a welcome. Equally important too to recognize the managers, the NGOs, and the government representatives that are here, and then can we also give them a big hand? I think my task this morning was to clarify some of the principles and concepts of LMMA, and then take you through some of the evolutions of LMMA over the last 10 years, and then maybe give some background before we go into some details and share and use the community leaders that are here to share some of those practices and the challenges as well. So the agenda for the next 1.5 hours is to look at what works in LMMAs. We look at spreading ideas, and hopefully towards the end we can exchange some of the information, how we can scale up some of our local efforts, LMMAs, to be able to reach some of the Aichi targets, or some of the CBD targets. LMMA is a concept. I think in most cases we interchangeably use the term LMMA, concept and a network. First and foremost, LMMA is a strategy, or management strategy, or concept. An area of nearshore that are largely or wholly supported by communities. It does not rule out the involvement of the government or NGOs as long as the community are driving the process. I think that is the key principles behind LMMA. And it does not also rule out the possibility of collaborative management. Just to give you some graphic illustrations of an LMMA concept or an LMMA strategy, you have community, and then within the marine management area, you have tools such as notates, permanent closures, temporary closures, seasonal closure, and even species-specific refugia. So in other words, the fishing area, the marine area is a managed area. It includes Notepad and other management tools as well. And it's important to recognize that communities are part of the managed area. Over the last 10 years, the LMMA have grown from 1 or 2 sites to more than 300. In seven countries, and that's collectively about 130,000 square kilometers of managed areas. And including over 600 participating communities within the 7 countries. Now, I want to also talk about the LMMA, the network. The network is a network of country networks, if that makes sense.